Some of the organisms we find in this darkness look less like modern animals and more like experiments from a forgotten chapter of evolution. Others thrive in environments so extreme they resemble the conditions where life may have first sparked on Earth. And the eerie part is this: the farther we push into the deep, the more it feels as though we aren't just discovering new species. We're uncovering alternate versions of biology, creatures shaped by pressures and chemistries that almost no surface organism could survive. This dive is a tour through those hidden lineages and ancient blueprints, clues to how life began, how it diversified, and how many rules it's willing to break. If you think you understand what an animal is, just wait until you see what the deep has been saving for us. The first anomaly on this dive appears as a shimmer, the kind of distortion you expect above hot pavement. Except here, it's rising from a hydrothermal vent, where water surges out hotter than many household stovetops. Yet on the rocks, thriving in that chemical storm, are small pale worms waving like grass in the wind. These are Pompeii worms. Their backs are covered in dense mats of heat-loving bacteria. The bacteria benefit from the minerals. The worm benefits from the insulation. It's a collaboration so finely balanced that even a slight shift in position can mean death. And this is where scientists start to feel the first tug of unease, the good kind. Because the chemical gradients here aren't just extreme, they're similar to what early Earth might have looked like. These animals aren't merely tough. They're showing us that life didn't need mild, sunlit pools to begin. We came here expecting creatures shaped by the deep, but already it feels like we're seeing remnants of ancient experiments, blueprints older than the organisms themselves. And the payoff of that realization becomes clearer just a few meters away. The vents recede into darkness, and the seafloor flattens into broad, pale sediment. It looks empty at first, a desert. But then the ROV lights sweep across something that doesn't match the stillness. A spiraled ridge, a lattice like carved bone, delicate fans rising from the mud. These aren't reefs. They aren't colonies. Each one is a single cell. Xenophytophores are some of the largest single-celled organisms ever discovered. Sprawling structures built grain by grain from whatever the current delivers. Shell fragments, mineral dust, radioactive particles. The debris of the entire ocean settles into their architecture. Their bodies are assemblages in the truest sense. The ocean builds them as much as they build themselves. And this is where their deeper significance emerges. We tend to picture complexity as something that requires many cells cooperating: muscles, nerves, tissues, organs. But xenophytophores are nature's quiet rebuttal. They show that complexity can emerge through scale, through structure, through slow accumulation, through time. The deep sea forces us to let go of the idea that evolution always moves toward familiar outcomes. Xenophytophores represent another path entirely. A lineage that never rushed towards multicellularity, never chased speed or sensation, yet still achieved a level of complexity that rivals small animals. They aren't a simpler version of us. They're a different answer to the same question. How does life take shape in a vast, shifting ocean? And they thrive here because this environment, cold, slow, high pressure, stable over geological timescales, resembles the conditions under which early life itself evolved. Xenophytophores feel like remnants of a world where time moved differently and evolution explored possibilities we rarely see at the surface. Deep sea researchers often say that xenophytophores seem primordial, not because they're old, but because they preserve an ancient logic. Build with what the world gives you, not with what you manufacture yourself. And that theme, life taking many forms that defy our categories, grows even stronger with the next creature. The ROV rises into the open water column, where life becomes harder to find. Then a clear cylinder drifts through the lights, pulsing gently. Inside is a creature holding on as if piloting the capsule from within. This is Phyronema. It doesn't build shelters from debris or sand. Instead, it attacks gelatinous animals like salps and reshapes their bodies into transparent chambers. It then climbs inside, raises its young from within the structure, and propels the entire assembly through the water. It is both architect and occupant. The Pompeii worm pushed our understanding of where life can exist. The xenophyophore broke assumptions about what a single cell can do. Phyronema breaks something even deeper, the boundary between organism and tool. When scientists first recorded its behavior, it raised uncomfortable questions about how cooperation, manipulation, and biological innovation might have evolved long before complex animals. And just when you think the deep has exhausted its surprises, another creature forces a bigger shift, one that questions the nature of nervous systems themselves. Far above the seafloor, in the open dark where pressure and silence stretch for miles, a comb jelly drifts into the ROV's lights. Rows of microscopic cilia beat along its body, scattering color like shards of refracted moonlight. It looks delicate, almost too delicate to belong to the same planet as the vent systems we just left behind. But comb jellies carry one of the most startling secrets in animal evolution. Lose a limb, a wound heals. Lose a major organ, some animals regenerate. But comb jellies lose their entire nervous system, the fundamental network that coordinates movement, sensation, feeding, and rebuild it within a day. No scars, no memory of the damage, a fully restored system. This alone should make us rethink what's biologically possible. But it's only the beginning. Genetic analyses suggest that comb jellies didn't inherit their nervous systems from the same ancestor that gave rise to ours. Instead, they appear to have evolved their own version of neural circuitry, separately, in parallel, as if evolution drafted two completely different instruction manuals for how to sense the world. One led to neurons clustered into brains, spinal cords, and synapses like ours. The other led to a shimmering creature drifting in the darkness, using a nervous system built from its own ancient blueprints. This divergence is huge. It means intelligence, coordination, and sensation might not be a single evolutionary pathway, but one of many possible outcomes. And the deep ocean, with its vast stability and isolation, acts like a vault. It preserves these ancient lineages the way amber preserves insects. Not frozen in time, but allowed to evolve on their own terms, without the pressures that shaped life at the surface. Comb jellies remind us that our systems, our brains, our nerves, our ways of processing the world, are not the default state of life. They are one experiment among countless others. And some of those experiments began in oceans that looked very different from ours, long before the continents formed their modern shapes. In a single drift of a comb jelly, you see something profound. Life is not committed to one design for consciousness or complexity. It's always trying multiple drafts, multiple architectures, multiple futures, in perpetuity. And that idea becomes the bridge that leads us to the final creature on this dive, another organism shaped by constraints we barely understand. The ROV's lights dim as it approaches waters just below the freezing point. Even the cables stiffen. Yet on the rocky slope ahead, multiple small shapes flicker with metallic iridescence. These are Antarctic scale worms. Their armored plates shimmer like copper and gold. Their jaws fire forward with startling speed. Their cells remain flexible in water cold enough to halt most biochemical reactions. Few animals on Earth push the chemistry of life closer to the edge. And here, the payoff becomes clear. Each creature on this dive shows us another break in the assumptions that shaped modern biology. And here, the vision becomes clear. Each creature on this dive shows us another break in the assumptions that shaped modern biology. They survive heat that collapses molecules. They build bodies without multicellularity. They repurpose other animals. They rewrite their own neural architecture. They stalk prey in liquid that should stop muscle cold. Taken together, they form a pattern, a quiet message rising from the dark. Life didn't follow one path. It followed many. As the ROV begins its ascent, the lights dim and the deep fades back into silence. But the images linger. Organisms shaped by heat, by pressure, by time, by isolation. Creatures that don't just survive the ocean's extremes, but feel native to them. As if the deep is the environment evolution has always understood best. And that's the real revelation of a dive like this. The deep sea isn't merely a frontier we haven't explored. It's a record, a living archive of evolutionary decisions that diverged from our familiar path hundreds of millions of years ago, and kept going. Up here at the surface, biology feels orderly. Cells behave in certain ways. Nervous systems follow certain rules. Organisms have boundaries and shapes we're used to. But the deep shows us that those rules are local, not universal. They are products of particular conditions, sunlight, seasons, competition, that don't exist down here. In the dark, life uses the full canvas of possibility. Every dive adds another exception that becomes a clue. Another clue that becomes a contradiction. Another contradiction that becomes a question we didn't know how to ask before. That's what makes these organisms so important. Not just that they are strange, but that they reveal how much of life's story is still unwritten, how many chapters are preserved in places almost untouched by time, and how narrow our sense of quote-unquote normal biology really is. As the ROV breaks back into the blue water, the mystery doesn't fade. It expands. Because if life can take these forms here, in the dark, under pressures and chemistries that seem impossible, then our understanding of what life is, where it can exist, and how it began is still only in its opening pages. And that is the gift of the deep ocean, a reminder that wonder isn't something we outgrow. It's something we keep rediscovering the farther we're willing to look. Stay curious, stay current, and thank you so much for watching.